Welcome to 21st Sports recap and reaction for the Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears in their Week 17 matchup played January 3rd, 2016. As these NFC North Division rivals were going at it, and we're going to go over all the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So starting off in the first quarter, less than 5 minutes into the game, Matthew Stafford hit Timothy Wright for a 9-yard touchdown pass. Matt Prater added the extra point, and it was 7-0 Detroit over Chicago. That was the only score in the first quarter, and through the second quarter, all the way to the final play of the first half, when Prater hit a 59-yard field goal. So Prater with the 59-yarder, 1 yard shy of 60, but it was 10-0 Lions over the Bears at halftime. Then in the third quarter, the Bears finally got on the scoreboard with their first possession of the second half, which would lead to a 49-yard field goal by Robbie Gould, and it was now 10-3 with the Lions still up by 7. But with 5.5 minutes left in the third, Jay Cutler hit Joshua Bellamy for a 34-yard touchdown. Gould added the extra point, and this game was tied at 10 apiece. Then with a minute left in the third quarter, Stafford hit Megatron Calvin Johnson Jr. for a 36-yard touchdown. Megatron diving for the touchdown. What a catch it was. Prater added the extra point, and it was 17-10 with the Lions back in the lead. So that was the score after 3. Then in the fourth quarter, with about 13.5 minutes left still in this game, Jay Cutler hit Matt Forte, and he took it into the end zone for the 23-yard touchdown. Gould added the extra point, and this game was tied at 17 apiece. Then with just under 9 minutes left to play in regulation, Matthew Stafford went to the tight end Eric Ebron for the 1-yard touchdown. Prater added the extra point, and it was now 24-17 with the Lions back up by 7. But with 5.5 minutes, just over 5.5 minutes still left in the fourth, Robbie Gould hit a 34-yard field goal, and that made it a 4-point game with the score Detroit 24, Chicago 20. So now, after the field goal, the Lions would end up punting the ball back to Chicago after 4 plays. They'd been pinned back against their end zone, and they ended up punting from the 12-yard line. And so now Chicago would take over on their own 43, and they would get into Detroit territory. When on 3rd and 3 from the 50, Forte ran at 13 yards for the first down, and that brought the game to the 2-minute warning. So now coming out of the 2-minute warning, 1st and 10 on the Lions 37, Jay Cutler drops back to pass, and he's intercepted by Quin. Fittingly, Quin having a big year picking off the ball. He comes up with the interception here, and that gives the Lions the ball on their own 33 as they would just run out the clock and force the Bears to use their final 3 timeouts. And on 3rd and 5, Stafford hit Megatron for a 6-yard reception to make it a first down. That's when the Bears used their final timeout, and all that was left to do was for Matthew Stafford to take 3 knees in the victory formation as the Lions hold on to win this one 24-20. They're now 7-9 on the season, 3-5 on the road. The Bears fall to 6-10. They're 1-7 at home this year. In Detroit, after starting off 0-5, and even they were 1-7, they end up winning 6 of their last 8 games, 6-2 after the bye week, with a pair of 3-game winning streak, and that was with a 2-game losing streak in between. But they beat the Packers in Green Bay, then they beat the Raiders and the Eagles before losing to Green Bay at home, and then losing in St. Louis, and then they end up going to New Orleans and winning. They ended up hosting the Niners, they beat them, and then they go to Chicago to finish off the 3-game winning streak in 2015. Will that be enough to save Caldwell's job? Well, we shall see if they're going to stick with Caldwell. Of course, we saw a bunch of firings earlier on in the season when they were 1-7. It seemed like they were just dropping everybody. They were dropping coordinators, GMs, but Caldwell is still there, and I actually believe that they should stick with Jim Caldwell. That's at least my opinion. Although, if you have a different opinion, feel free to share it in the comments section below. So I think it was more a matter of just a tough schedule for Detroit, especially early on. They had some really tough games as they started off the year with road games in San Diego, in Minnesota. Then they hosted the Broncos. Then they had to go to Seattle. So 3 out of their first 4 games were on the road, a couple of them on the West Coast. And then in Week 5, they hosted the Cardinals, who of course went on to be 13-3. Of course, they would get their first win against the Bears, and they also got their last win against the Bears as they swept the season series, but then losing to Minnesota as the Vikings swept them, and then they lost in Kansas City to a team that has now won 10 games in a row. So you look at early on, that schedule was really tough, all those road games and those tough opponents, but they did get things together in the second half of the year, and they were able, they beat the Packers. So, of course, and in the Raiders also, of course, the Raiders struggled against NFC teams, and even they totally dominated the Eagles. And the Eagles, although they fired Chip Kelly, they did beat the Patriots. So, but anyway, in this game, Matthew Stafford put up some decent numbers, 28 for 39, 298 passing yards, just 2 yards shy of 300. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 10 yards on the ground. Amir Abdullah, 10 carries for 44 yards in this game. He also had 1 catch for 7 yards, giving him 51 total yards in the game. Megatron Calvin Johnson, he had 10 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown. Joik Bell had 2 catches for 49 yards. He also had 9 rushing yards off of 3 carries, giving Joik Bell 58 total yards in the game. Golden Tate, 4 catches for 34 yards. Theo Riddick, 4 catches for 29 yards. And Eric Ebron, 5 catches for 25 yards and a touchdown. Wright also had a catch for 9 yards and a touchdown as well. Riddick also had 4 yards on the ground off of 2 carries, which would give Theo Riddick 33 total yards in the game. Jay Cutler was 17 of 23 for the Bears, 245 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Matt Forte, 17 carries for 76 yards. He also had 3 receptions for 34 yards, giving him 110 total yards on the game, and he had a receiving touchdown. Jeremy Langford, just 5 carries for 14 yards. And Mariani had 6 catches for 80 yards. Bellamy, 3 catches for 49 yards and a touchdown. Look at the kickers in this game. Prater with that 59-yard field goal. He was 1 for 2 on the field goals, and he was 3 for 3 on the extra points. Gould, 2 for 2 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. And for the defense for Detroit, Ahidebo had an interception. Whitehead had an interception as well. And Glover Quin had the interception that all but sealed the deal in this game as the Lions defense comes up with the 3 picks. Ziggy Ansah had a sack. Taylor had a sack as well. And Hatoli Nada had a sack, as did Wilson. And then we look at the defense for Chicago. Jones, Callahan, Houston, and Scruggs all had sacks, as the Bears had 4 sacks in this game. Then we look at the team stats. 22 first downs for the Lions, 16 for the Bears. On third down, Chicago was 7 of 12, 58%, and Detroit 4 for 10, 40% on third down. They went for it once on fourth down. They did not convert. They turned it over on downs. The Lions had 349 total net yards in the game, 342 for Chicago. On the ground, the Bears netted 108. The Lions 67 net rushing yards. And through the air, Detroit netted 282. Stafford sacked 4 times for a total loss of 16 yards. And Chicago netted 234 through the air, as Cutler was sacked 4 times, losing a total of 11 yards. And the penalties in this game, not really a lot of penalties. Just 4 against the Lions for 21 yards. Only 1 penalty against the Bears for 15 yards. And then we look at the red zone. Detroit 2 for 2, 100%. And the Chicago 0 for 2 as the Lions turn the red zone into the dead zone on the defensive end, as they dominated the red zone in this game, 100% on their end, and blanking the Bears on the other side. And the time of possession, 32 minutes and 30 seconds for the Lions, 27 minutes, 30 seconds for the Bears. So the Lions, they come away with a victory that may or may not have saved Caldwell's job, but we won't know until, who knows, as Caldwell was one of the coaches that they were saying that he wouldn't get fired right away. If he were to get fired, it would be something that would come a little bit further down the road. So that's one they don't really expect to see that on Monday, but we'll see what happens. You never know in this game. Anything's possible as coaches are starting to drop already. We've seen a couple firings, and it's still Sunday. But it'll be interesting to see how that develops, but we'll definitely keep you updated on that. We'll also be going over some season recaps in the weeks to come, so keep an eye out for those as well. In Detroit, like I said, they started off with a rough schedule early on, but they turned things around in the second half, and they started playing the way that they could play, that with the potential that they have. They have a ton of talent on this team. Of course, they had some big losses in the offseason leading up to this year, but they still have plenty of talent on the defensive side and on the offensive side. And we saw some sparks from Amir Abdullah. If he can build on that success towards next year, the Lions can get above 500 and maybe make it to the playoffs, although I thought they would make the playoffs this year. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good week and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.